Last week, I was taking a workshop with my favorite working artist today, Daniel Keyes, and he brought up a truth that I think affects all realist painters, which is that we paint to our strengths and choose subjects that mask our weaknesses. In Daniel's case, he sees realist painting as being broken down into drawing, value, color, edges, and composition, and notes that whether you paint portraits, landscapes, or still lifes, you are probably flexing certain artistic muscles and neglecting others. For example, maybe you're a landscape painter. You may develop an excellent sense of value and color to ensure that you suggest depth and atmosphere in your landscape. But you can worry a little bit less about your drawing since the landscape will probably look just as real whether or not you put that tree in exactly the right spot. Or maybe you're a portrait painter with an excellent eye for drawing, which translates to capturing a good likeness, but your sense of color and thus skin tones could maybe use a little help. And it's not just limited to genres of painting either. Maybe you love painting complex still lifes with lots of vases or other geometric objects. Well, your sense of perspective better be spot on. Or maybe you forego man made objects and instead focus just on flowers, giving you an excellent eye for color. No matter the case, if you feel you have room to grow as an artist, you probably have a weakness in one of these areas, and that's exactly what I was confronted with in this painting. This scene of horses in a pasture was unique in that I felt really confident about the horses, which is the first subject I ever learned to draw, but I was tasked with painting as much of a portrait of the entire pasture as I was with the horses. The reason is that this is a family farm with a great deal of history and sentimental value. The problem is, I'm not a landscape painter, and I don't have a shorthand for painting trees with thousands upon thousands of leaves, or an ability to capture nuances of green on a summer's day when the grass and leaves are so bright they might as well be neon. Or that is to say, maybe I do have the ability, but it's certainly not my comfort zone. As a result, I had to take a lot of time for trial and error on this painting, as you'll see in this time lapse. The thing that I think helped me the most was avidly studying the work of still life painters, particularly, specifically when they were painting similar subjects. I'll give you an example. I was once painting with Mark Bogus, a landscape painter based out of Vermont, who commented on needing a totally different mentor for painting in the Northeast versus when he painted in the Southwest. Out west, the scenes were so vast that capturing atmosphere and creating depth felt somewhat intuitive. Whereas out east, the scenes were usually only 100 yards deep instead of being miles deep. So you had to use different techniques to create a compelling image that felt like there was real depth in it. In keeping with this, I decided to look at the work of painters who had tackled East Coast summer scenes, especially, given their vibrant greens and busy, leafy trees. Interestingly, I found that a lot of amazing landscape painters will doggedly avoid these conditions. Summers are notoriously difficult because the the sun is just so bright that the greens wind up being almost flat in their color. There's just not a lot of nuance and gradation to capture, and it comes through in a painting. So, for example, if you're looking through Richard Schmidt's work, while he will paint bright scenes in other seasons of the year, he overwhelmingly prefers overcast days. And now I think I kind of am beginning to understand why. But seeing as I was committed to a summer painting, here's what I learned to focus on from other masterpieces. One was to use any trick to make the greens more believable. In my case, that meant putting my reference in Photoshop and doing a lot of work to create more variation in the greens and make them look as naturalistic and interesting as I could. Two was to simplify. Even though I was overwhelmed by the complexity of the tree and all of its leaves, I had to find a way to suggest the leaves instead of painting them one by one. Not only would this be less tedious, it would also be more painterly and pleasing to look at. And three, wherever possible, I tried to have a painting that would serve as inspiration. I looked at examples of tree trunks, tree limbs, leaves, fields of grass. Basically, everything I felt uncertain about, I had inspiration for. So if you're in the same boat, I would try and think of 2 and 3 as much as you can. Ask yourself how you can simplify a daunting subject, and as much as possible, look at other paintings, not just in general, but specifically before you sit down to paint. Have images, just photos of other paintings handy. Look at them often. Ask yourself exactly how the artist must have made the individual brushstrokes that made those components come to life for you. I guarantee those two things are going to make challenging subjects much more approachable. At the very least, they'll help you get through your first painting on this subject, which, in my experience, is usually the hardest. After the first painting is down, you get a sense of momentum, and even if it wasn't some overwhelming success, you probably have learned something that you can use to make the next painting even easier. And that's only going to build on itself until suddenly it doesn't seem that daunting anymore. So when I went back to my painting, I tried as hard as I could to simplify the oak tree's boughs into shapes of color rather than seeing this dizzying scatter plot of individual leaves, all in different colors and values. Because this involved a great deal of trial and error, when I felt frustrated, I went back to the subject I knew I could tackle with confidence, the horses. In hindsight, they were extremely small, about as small as I could have painted them, but working on them was a welcome break from cataloging these oak leaves. I suspect in this case my challenge came down to some combination of drawing, values, and edges. The act of simplifying the tree, while offering a great deal of leeway, also involved a great deal of understanding what simplifications would evoke the tree versus ones that wouldn't. This is the exact same as a caricature artist who captures a face despite cartoonish exaggerations. Then, onto the values and edges. The values really do tie into that simplification, and the edges were there to support the idea of evoking leaves without looking needlessly busy. Now that I'm on the other side of this painting, though, I actually feel kind of excited to do it again. This time on location, though. I don't know that it would be particularly easy, but having done it once makes me feel as though I can continue to make progress toward these weaknesses. And it wouldn't be the first time I've done this either. Before I discovered Daniel Key's work, I really had no interest in still life and pretty much no interest in flowers. I did, however, have a profound appreciation for color and light, which Daniel's work captures like no one else's. So, determined to capture this for myself, I dove in. I found flowers to paint. I started growing them in my garden to avoid bankrupting myself at the garden center, and have grown as a result to really love having plants not just in my home, but in my portfolio. I don't know that I'll ever really be known for the subject the way Daniel is, but it's amazing how your enjoyment of a subject can grow after another artist shows you what's worth admiring in it, and after you in turn begin to see its value and give it a try. And even if I won't be known first and foremost for floral still life, I know that taking the time to try it and study it will make the rest of my work that much stronger. In my 2020 art goals video, I talked about both still life and landscape painting as being big goals of mine for this year. So I want to talk about painting plein air, or painting outside on location, as well. One thing that Daniel shared in his workshop was that at first, painting outside caused him to panic a little bit, which makes sense. Outside, the light changes constantly, and there's this sense that you have to paint extremely fast, which usually actually slows you down. So, beyond just this idea of landscape painting is helping you with value, color, edges, or composition, I'm really excited to see how it can help fight the impulse to paint too quickly and instead help slow down and create more deliberate block ins with fewer mistakes. And I know that's not the only example of this in play, so I really want to hear what your experience has been like. What are some subjects where you really didn't realize you had this weakness until you gave this one subject a try? And what did you learn? Did it relate to drawing, value, color, edges, or composition? Or did it encourage you to simplify your process? Whatever the case may be, I'd really like to hear from you, so please leave me a comment down below, and hopefully we can all learn from one another. Finally, speaking of floral still life, I have 2 new painting time lapses that I hope to share with you this week. Both of them are floral paintings from the workshop I took with Daniel, so please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can see the new paintings. And like this video if you'd like to see more videos about how to become a master oil painter. By the way, do you like the idea of having new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Before now, I had been posting on a Monday, Thursday schedule, but I think I have enough paintings to keep up with a more regular pace. So if you'd like to see more videos, please tell me so in the comment section. And until my next video, I've put all of the materials I used for this painting, including the varnish, in the description box below. I also have a varnishing video that I'll link to in the upper right hand corner of your screen. And if you're interested in commissioning a painting like this one, I have an informational link in the description box as well. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something cool and that you have an excellent week of painting.